What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 10-7 MMA Show. I am Huzaifa. And what's up, Anakin? Thank you for jumping on a little early here. It says if Izzy loses to DDP, maybe he fights Rob if he loses to Hamza. Okay, so there's actually a lot to talk about today. Oh, I'm glad you brought up Rob Whitaker, by the way, because I want to talk about him. He has an amazing podcast. If you guys haven't checked it out, it's sort of half MMA and half, I think it's called MMA Arcade. It's half MMA, half video games. I only watch for the MMA portion, but it's really, really cool. He talked about the Hamzat fight and what's next. So that's something we definitely want to talk about in the context of this title fight, which is very, very interesting. But let's get in the mix. By the way, I believe it's just going to be me today. Justin is in Alaska. So I think it's going to be just me, sadly. We won't get that expert analysis today, but I will do my best to give you good takes, hopefully, and make some interesting points. So without further ado, let's jump in to the show rundown. Once again, thank you, everybody, for joining. And if you are enjoying the stream, even at this stage, you're welcome to hit that like button. Would really appreciate it. Celine, what's up? How's it going? All right, here we go. So the first fight that I want to talk about today, which is coming up at UFC 305, which, by the way, UFC 305, if you guys aren't aware of this, it's so crazy how much stuff has been going on this summer in terms of UFC activity. But UFC 305 is right around the corner. It's August 17th. That's a week from tomorrow. All right, so we're just going to quickly take a look at, one sec, I'll show you guys the full card. It's a pretty dope card. So we'll do a screen share here, and you guys can check it out. Hopefully next week we can get Justin's take on. Oops, why is it not popping up here? Hold on. We can get Justin's take on exactly what he thinks in the breakdown of this fight. But I'll tell you guys my initial thoughts, and I'll tell you why I think what I think, and then I'd love for you guys to give me your feedback as well. Hold on. Okay, so here's UFC 305. So we got an incredible main event. If you guys remember, for the heat, that's kind of been the beef that's kind of been brewing between these two. It's a little bit of an artificial beef, in my opinion, but it all has to do with these Africa comments. Who's the true African, right? Dricus du Plessis and it stirred up a lot of people, right? Because he's claiming to be the true African because he's a citizen of South Africa. He lives there. He resides there. And he said he'd be the first residing in Africa African champion. And so Izzy, Kamaru Usman, and Francis Ngannou all kind of took offense to that to some degree. And hence we had that sort of beef or artificial beef, if you will. I don't really care that much about the heat or the quote unquote personal beef between these two guys, but it's an incredible matchup. Now, I've been listening to a lot of folks talk about this fight, and it does seem to be, what's up, Tehran? What's up, Anakin? So it does seem to be a tricky matchup for Izzy. And the reason why is because the way that Dricus fights is he's very forward, right? He's coming forward. He's applying a ton of pressure. And that's essentially a similar strategy that Sean Strickland applied as well. And that was very successful against Izzy. I don't think it's going to work in the same way, however, and I'll tell you why, and I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. So the thing about Sean Strickland that people often overlook is he's considered to be one of the best defensive strikers and defensive sort of like stand-up guys in mixed martial arts. He doesn't get enough credit for that, but he's very, very defensive. And the problem, even though the forward pressure definitely did great stuff against Izzy, he's constantly throwing those front teeps, constantly keeping people at bay and messing up that flow that Izzy wants to get into or likes to get into. The thing about Dricus is I don't know if he's that defensively minded. He's very awkward and he stands in awkward positions, and that could be tricky. But what I think and what I see happening here is I see Izzy as the expert kickboxer, with that amazing precision. I think he's going to pick him apart. I think he's going to take him down. Also, I feel like if Izzy loses this fight, it's going to be it's just going to be a problem. I mean, what is he going to do then? He's going to have to drop down. He's not going to get a title shot next, obviously. Maybe he can get one win. Maybe he might need two to come back. And he's getting up there in age. Here, I'll tell you Izzy's age. Let's see, I want to say 36, but let me double check here. Oh, he's 35. Okay. I mean, granted, he's in a heavier weight class, middleweight class, etc. So there's a little bit of a longer lifespan or period of time for fighters to be active and be effective than in the lower weight classes. But I feel like Izzy has taken time off. He's coming back renewed, reinvigorated after all these fights, an insane schedule. And honestly, I want to see Izzy win. I know a lot of folks are really big fans of Dricus. MMA Guru in particular is very much on the side of Dricus du Plessis. I mean, look, I'll be happy for either fighter. I think it's going to be cool either way. But I would love to see Izzy come back, reclaim it again, coming back from defeat, right? He lost to Alex Pereira and then he came back and won. That was incredible. Loses to Sean Strickland, comebacks and beats Dricus, and then maybe he fights Sean Strickland or Robert Whittaker next. Now, let's talk about, and guys, put in the chat as well your thoughts on this fight. I'd love to know who you're picking, who you're leaning towards, and why. But if we go back to Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev, so let's talk about this. It isn't one of the listed topics, but a lot of people were very upset with the Khamzat and Robert Whittaker fight. And the reason why they were upset is because they felt like it was unfair and disrespectful to Robert Whittaker. Oh, Robert Whittaker had to take this fight against Ikram, and then now he's still fighting the same opponent. Why isn't Khamzat being penalized for pulling out, et cetera, et cetera? Well, it came out on the MMA Arcade podcast, which is, again, Robert Whittaker's podcast, that this was not given to him. He asked for this. He wanted this fight. And he likes taking these fights. He likes disrupting hype trains. He wanted this big challenge. Moreover, his explanation for why he requested this fight is he said, if I win this fight, if I beat Chimaev, who's one of the biggest prospects the UFC has ever had, I'll argue the biggest, the greatest prospect of that the UFC has ever had. He's just been derailed by illness and sickness and other things happening that have derailed the hype train. But I mean, Dana White said, if you guys remember, as Khamzat was on the rise, that they had never seen anybody like him. It's just he's lost momentum because of the inactivity, and some of it's, you could say it's his fault, but when you're getting sick and when you're getting, I believe the last time he had to pull out, people said food poisoning initially, but I believe it was actually pneumonia. What are you going to do? I mean, I don't think you can fully put that on him. Yes, he's my favorite fighter, slightly biased, but I think you can really put that on him. Anyways, greatest prospect, I will say, of all time. Robert Whittaker goes in, he beats him. He's going to be somewhat undeniable for a title shot. Now we get into that tricky spot of what to do with Strickland, because Strickland is adamant he will not take another fight other than the title fight. So my prediction, I think what's going to happen, we're going to have Izzy DDP. Robert Whittaker is fighting Chimaev in Abu Dhabi, I believe, in like October. They're the co-main for 308. So what I think we're going to see is maybe the winner of Izzy versus DDP is going to fight Strickland, which would make sense. Let's say you could queue that up for maybe December, January, something like that. And that'll give Robert Whittaker, the winner of Robert Whittaker and Khamzat, time to rest and recover. And then the winner of that will fight the winner of either it's Izzy Strickland or DDP versus Strickland rematch there. Either way, it's going to be dope. I think that seems to be the blueprint for the middleweight division. So let's see. But if that does come to fruition, as I'm predicting, I think that's going to be super cool. A bunch of amazing fights and amazing matchups. Looking like Jones is going to retire after the Stipe fight. Let me talk about this. I want to talk about this. This is not one of the listed topics today, but we're going to talk about Jon Jones. And I'm going to give you my take on all of this craziness of Jon Jones's name, which is being dragged through the mud, unfairly so, in my opinion. And I want to tell you what my thoughts are. Now, if you want to begrudge the UFC and be upset with them, I think you can do that. And I think there's some valid grounds for that, in the sense of why, we have Jon Jones. He had an injury, a legitimate injury. He's been sitting out for a while. In that time, we have Tom Aspinall on the rise. He's now the interim champion. Okay, fine. So people are upset that Jon Jones is not calling out Aspinall, or is quote unquote ducking Aspinall. Look, the UFC makes the fights. And if people want to be upset with the UFC, fine. But I don't see why people are getting upset with Jon Jones and saying that he's ducking Aspinall. He has no obligation, first of all, to fight Aspinall. He beats Aspinall, there's going to be another up-and-comer. It's never ending for him. And Jon Jones has had a very, very long career. So to me, he's taken the fight that was given to him by the UFC. The UFC scrapped it when he was injured, and they didn't put him in a replacement fight. They left it as is. And that's not on Jon Jones. They said, we still want you. If they would have said, hey, we're putting Stipe against Sergey Pavlovich, and we are going to reschedule you against Tom Aspinall, okay, then you could say he's ducking Tom Aspinall if he did not accept that fight. That's not what happened. The UFC, for whatever reason, wants Stipe versus Jones, and I'm not really that opposed to it. I want to see the fight. I think people are mostly upset because Tehran says he doesn't think that Jones is afraid of Aspinall. Look, afraid might not even be the right word. Maybe he might think it's a tough fight that he doesn't want to take because the upside is not that great versus the downside, the potential downside if he does lose. And I can get that. And he's at the end of the career. And I don't think he really has much to prove at this point with his resume and everything he's done. Why does he need to stick around and do it? And I think it's partially, God, I hate to say this, but I feel like he's getting so much hate that's really should be directed at the UFC. Not even, I actually like the fight, so I'm fine with it, and I think it's fine that they retain the title because I feel like John Jones has earned that leniency. Maybe they would have stripped other fighters, but John Jones is John Jones. He's essentially undefeated and has this incredible streak and the greatest resume of all time. Fine, you can bend the rules a little bit. They bend the rule for Conor all the time. They bend the rule for a lot of fan favorite fighters or fighters who've done incredible things. So I don't think this is that even big of a deal from the UFC standpoint. But if you're going to be mad at somebody, you can be upset with the UFC because the fight. You want to say that Leon Edwards was ducking Shavkat? No, because the UFC made the fight with Bilal. Nobody complained. There's like, all right, Shavkat's next. Bilal deserves it, right? But we could have said the same thing in a way, right? Maybe Shavkat is a scarier opponent than Bilal would be for Leon to fight. So Leon wasn't calling out Shavkat. Okay, Bilal was next in line, and it is what it is. So I think it's something like that. It's a similar dynamic, in my opinion. Now, Tehran says he thinks that Jones can beat Aspinall. A lot of people have said that. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting fight. And John Jones, his greatest attribute is his mind. He's a very cerebral fighter. He comes up with an amazing game plan. He plays to his strengths and goes and takes advantage of the weaknesses of his opponent. So he's very cerebral the way he fights. I don't know how that fight would go. I think it's interesting. I'm not dying to see it, though. I'm not going bonkers to see that fight because, yes, Tom Aspinall probably will be unbelievable and probably will have a long reign, and his skill set is second to none. But there's going to be somebody like that even after Tom Aspinall. It's never ending. I almost feel as though after this fight, I'm fine with the closing of the chapter of John Jones's legacy as a previous generation, and now we make room for Tom Aspinall, the next generation. I don't know. I just don't. I'm not clamoring to see that fight. Also, John Jones is 37. Tom Aspinall, I think, is like 30 or 31. Tom Aspinall is dead in the center or right at the beginning of his prime. So it's not like so interesting to me if he does go out and beat John Jones. It's amazing for Tom Aspinall to boost his resume. But it's not really both of them in the dead center of their prime. If John Jones wins, I mean, that's insane. But he doesn't need to. So anyways, my point is I'm in full support of whatever John Jones wants to do. If he wants to just fight Stipe and ride off to the sunset, I don't see why people should give him such a hard time. I think MMA Guru, as much as I like him, has been really, really hard and a little bit unfair to John Jones. And yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for John Jones versus Stipe. By the way, here's my conspiracy theory on why the UFC and Dana White is pushing so hard for that. Guess who just announced a return to mixed martial arts? That's Francis Ngannou. And I want to talk to Justin because Justin's teammates with Francis. Unfortunately, I don't think he's joining us today. But Francis is coming back, and that's a big deal in the world of mixed martial arts, even though that fight is in the PFL. Now, Francis right now was the heavyweight champ. He walked away. He was never beaten. Stepped away, never got to fight John Jones, went into boxing, arguably beat Tyson Fury, which is insane, arguably beat the greatest boxer of all time. Now, maybe that was a bit of a fluke, as we saw he fought Anthony Joshua and got decimated, and Tyson Fury looked a lot better in the subsequent fight after that. People were saying like he didn't really train for Francis Ngannou, didn't take him seriously. I don't know, whatever it is. Whatever you want to say, but the fact of the matter is that people consider Tyson Fury to be the greatest heavyweight boxer of all time. Francis basically beat him, which destroyed it. Basically blew the mind of every combat sport analyst in the world. It was insane. Nobody predicted that. Not a million miles. Nowhere even close to people predict that. So you have the heavyweight champ who never lost, left, then basically becomes a heavyweight champ of boxing, you could say, okay? And now he's going in, and Francis is a huge star right now. That's why Dana White wants this John Jones fight. And I don't know why more people aren't talking about it. I have heard people talk about it before. This isn't my original thought. I'm surprised not more people are talking about it because he wants John Jones to go in, beat Stipe, say that Francis was 1-1 with Stipe. John Jones is 1-0 with Stipe, beat the greatest heavyweight of all time. So nobody can say that Francis was the greatest heavyweight and we just never got him tested against John Jones and these other guys. So say definitively of all time, John Jones is the greatest combat athlete of all time. I think AKA the baddest man on the planet. I think that's what the UFC is afraid of. And maybe this could have a detrimental effect on the brand, I imagine, is why Dana is going on and why people are sort of getting upset or clowning him about, him. Everybody's saying glazing John Jones, right? But I think at the heart of it, that's what it's about, is basically having, at the end of the day, the UFC having ownership of the greatest fighters in the world, not another organization. I think it must be a big deal because Dana White's really going out of his way to, one, get this fight, and to, two, constantly promote John Jones. It's got to be because of Francis. That's my theory. Okay, let's see some of these comments. We could have said the same thing when Conor. Exactly. We could have 100%. I think some people, maybe some people did get upset, but people were pretty cool with that. Yeah, people are treating John Jones very unfairly. And this whole thing about him, like, I feel like it's obviously kind of a joke and not real, that MMA Guru is going on about his sexual preference. I think that all that stuff needs to stop as well. I don't know. He just keeps going on about it, and I think it's disrespectful, highly disrespectful. Conor also avoided a prime Ferguson. Yeah, we could say that too. Yes, thank you, Tehran. I agree. Thank you. Yes, I don't think he has anything to prove. I don't get why people are so upset that he may not fight Tom Aspinall. He doesn't have to. Yeah, I agree. Francis is probably not coming back to the UFC, but just imagine if he did. Holy smokes. Just imagine if somehow it worked out that Francis wins this fight, somehow comes back to the UFC. I don't know if he'd be allowed to with his PFL contract. Somehow comes back to the UFC for a super fight. John Jones versus Francis, the fight that we all wanted to see forever. Holy smokes. What if that's somewhere? Now, it can't happen now. It can't happen now because we have John Jones and we have an interim champ. And then what? They're going to like make the interim champ once again sit idly by while another title fight takes, like, it would be too silly. Super sad. But I don't think that will ever happen. The only way it could happen maybe is if we see John Jones go in, fight Aspinall, win, and then Francis comes back. I don't think it's going to happen. That'd be cool though. All right, moving on, everybody, to another fight on this UFC 305 card next week. Dan Hooker versus Gamrot. Okay, this is a pretty wild fight, and I want to talk about why. I really wanted to hear Justin's thoughts on this fight. I'm going to tell you mine, and kind of sad about it, to be honest, in terms of what I think is going to happen. I think this is sadly going to be a fairly one-sided affair, or I'm afraid it's going to be a one-sided affair. And let me show you guys the rankings here. And the reason why I say that is because I love Dan Hooker. He is incredible to watch, his Muay Thai is incredible. His striking is amazing. And he's a fun dude, awesome on the mic, awesome when interviewed. He's great. He's been on a bit of a losing streak. I think he did win his last fight, if I remember correctly, or maybe his last two fights. Hold on, let me double check. I want to double check his record. But that being said, his fights were not against super highly ranked opponents. I remember there's the one guy that would not get up off the ground, just kept scooting towards him. That was Claudio Puelles. Hold on, let me share this 1 second. So we'll oh shoot. We'll look back at his resume really quickly. Yeah, so this fight, if you guys remember, was ridiculous here. So Claudio Puelles, I think he like kept wanting to get him into his guard and just fight straight jiu-jitsu. Dan Hooker won that. And then we had the Jalen Turner fight, which was a split decision, but Dan Hooker did win that. Okay, so those are his last two wins. He had two losses, one to Islam, one to Arnold Allen. Before that, he was really on a tear. He fought Dustin Poirier, and he almost won that fight. Like, Dan Hooker was the man. He's had a little tiny bit of a fall from grace. By the way, Dan Hooker, his age is 34. So still relatively young. For lightweight, maybe that's getting a bit up there. And Justin always says, like, being in your prime is a combination of age as well as damage. So, we have to take that all into consideration. But all right, let's look at this. Right, we've got Dan Hooker down here at 11 fighting highly ranked Matthias Gamrot, who's ranked number 5. Now, I actually think Gamrot, a lot of people think Gamrot is the future of the division. Gamrot as well as Fiziev, very, very, very dangerous fighter, insane ground game. Seems to be a pretty bad matchup for Dan Hooker. That's what I'm feeling, and I feel like Gamrot's going to get it, and this is really going to push Dan Hooker to the bottom of the top 15. I don't know where. Maybe he'll drop down to 13, still above Jalen Turner, but that's what I'm seeing here. It is going to be a really fun fight because any Dan Hooker fight's a fun fight. So I'm excited for it regardless, but I'd love to know your guys' thoughts in the comments as well. Yeah, Tehran's picking Gamrot. I agree. And Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker would have been insane. I never even thought about that. They're a bit far apart. Well, I guess not that much farther apart than Gamrot and Hooker. That would have been a good fight. Holy smokes. That's a good one. Charles Oliveira versus Dan Hooker. Yeah, I think that'd be cool too. But again, I feel like Charles Oliveira would have a substantial advantage just because of the ground game and his ability. Like Charles Oliveira, when he doesn't fight people that have a good ground game, he can be so reckless on the feet with his Muay Thai because anybody drops him, they usually don't follow him down. So he can just sit there, rest, recover, and then jump back up. He did that. He did that to Dustin, and I think he did that to Michael Chandler, and I think he did that to somebody else too. I don't know, but that's the thing. So I feel like he would best Dan Hooker in that respect. But a very exciting fight, nonetheless. Super, super cool. So let's see what happens. All right, let's move along to Conor McGregor. He is back in the news. All right, so I don't know if you guys saw this. This is insane, by the way. Completely insane. So we are going to pull up this entire Twitter battle, and I want to show you all these tweets. If you guys haven't seen them, I just want to talk about them because I want to talk about what I think is happening with Conor and Chandler and Trump. Okay, let's see this. All right, I'm going to try and find the images of this really quickly. The images. All right, 1 second, because I'm pretty sure Conor deleted all his tweets. What are these? Oh, here. Tweets. X. Let's see. I'm having trouble finding these tweets. 1 second. Conor. Let's say Conor McGregor. Chandler tweets. Here we go. Okay, found it. Oh, this is an old one. Hold on. Finding here. Let me screen share here. All right, but basically, as I'm looking this up, let me kind of tell you guys what happened. So it's just insane. All right, these are older tweets. Wow, I'm really surprised. I'm having a hard. I should have pulled this up ahead of time. All right, let me just kind of give you guys the synopsis. So the synopsis is Trump goes in and is being interviewed. I can't remember who, by Aiden Ross or somebody. He's being interviewed, and hey, MMA Joey, yeah, MMA Joey is the man. Yo, dude, thank you for joining our stream. So my co-host today, Justin, he's got all the MMA expertise. He's not able to join today, but I wish he could have, and you could hear our full kind of arsenal, our full show. But anyways, so let's recap what went down. So first of all, we have this interview, and Chandler is going. Or sorry, Trump is talking about his favorite fighter, and his favorite fighter, who he said is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Okay, he talks about everything he's done. He said he had a conversation with him about the war in Russia and Ukraine, and this got out. Conor lost his mind. Now, I think this is another thing that we need to consider. I just don't understand. Somebody was saying this as well. I think Daniel Cormier, when he was talking to Ben Askren, he's just like, why do Conor and Khabib hate each other so much? And Daniel's like, I don't think Khabib really thinks that much about Conor anymore. But Conor, I don't understand it. I guess that loss to Khabib or that entire buildup or something, he just hates him so much. So let's think about all these things. Trump says Khabib is his favorite fighter. Conor loses his mind, says crazy stuff on Twitter, even then jumps to say that Trump is now going to lose the election. So his brain just broke from those statements. And if you also guys remember, he had put in a bid to buy Khabib's home. So Khabib had to leave to the UAE and had to leave his home back in Dagestan and is now being auctioned off by the Russian government. And Conor put in a bid, supposedly, to buy the house specifically for pooing and peeing in the house. That was what he said. This is insane to hate somebody this much and to be doing all these things when the person is completely retired, out of the game. He's not going to come back and fight Conor. I don't know if he's baiting him to fight him. I think he literally just hates him that much that he wants to constantly poke the bear for whatever reason. But I do think this is symbolic or emblematic of the fact that just Conor is not in the right mind space. Now we also he started going into a back and forth with Chandler afterwards. Chandler jumps in, has an issue with wait, did I just get a message here? Ooh, I just got a message from MMA Joey. Awesome. I think he sent me all the Twitter stuff. Hold on, let me see this. Oh, MMA Joey, you are the man, dude. Okay, hold on 1 second. I got to get all this stuff up here. Wait, let me see if I can access it up here. 1 second. MMA Joey, if you guys haven't, I mean, you probably have seen his stuff. He is fast becoming one of my absolute favorite YouTubers. Hold on. All right, let me see if I can get this up on my screen. He's amazing. He's also the one that turned me around on Bilal Muhammad. So if you guys checked out my Bilal Muhammad video where I did an apology to him, I was kind of not feeling like I wasn't feeling like that big of a fan of his. I thought a lot of the things he was saying were extremely hyperbolic and ridiculous. And then he came out and he proved everybody wrong and was amazing. But the cool thing about MMA Joey is that he basically from the get-go has had Bilal's back and really felt like an injustice was being done. And he just it was just pure, really good, perceptive fandom. It was amazing. So that's one of the main reasons why I made that apology video, and I think it was well earned. So, anyways, okay, here's the Twitter back and forth. Stop it. If you had half the, so Michael Chandler's getting Trump's back. Stop it. The notorious MMA, if you had half the balls that Donald Trump had, you would have shown up on June 29th. Instead, your normal walking, beer chugging, Austin 316 style local fight show motorcycle. So that's another thing. He went to this crazy motorcycle rally and there was all this footage of him partying and it was just super, super bizarre. And then Conor says, bro, he doesn't even know who the F you are. He probably thinks you are a little broke, begging, whatever. Later, it goes on, and then finally, Michael Chandler's like, all right, it's time for me to admit that this fight is no longer happening. Immediately, Conor's like, all right, cool, fight's off. Max Holloway, what are you up to? So now, who knows what's going to go down with this fight? MMA Joey has been talking about this forever, saying that he doesn't believe the Chandler fight versus Conor is ever going to materialize or happen. I would feel pretty bad for Chandler if that is the case. I guess we'll see in December if it's coming up, but we also saw that footage of Conor chugging a beer at the event. I don't know. It feels like Conor's completely unhinged. And Joey says okay. But anyways, Joey, what's your thoughts on this? Because I feel like Conor is completely unhinged. This is a very bad sign. Now Michael Chandler is starting to feel like the fight's not going to happen. He immediately wants to swap him out for Max Holloway. I don't think they've signed a deal yet in terms of this potential. I think that people are throwing around the date of December 14th, but it's looking bad and it's really, really sad to see. And also, if you saw that weird footage of Conor hitting the pads when he got that traffic charge and basically lost his license for 2 years, it didn't look very good to me. And also, Sean O'Malley commented immediately, said slow and sloppy. I don't know if you agree or disagree. But anyways, we're in a very, very weird situation with Conor just seeming to have these, they're really, really unhinged rants. I mean, if you would imagine any normal person or friend of yours doing this or saying these things on Twitter, it's bad. Are we going to see Chandler versus McGregor? According to MMA Joey, no. And sadly, I'm starting to agree with him. And I really, really hope that's not the case. I want to see it. So MMA Joey says McGregor is rich and too busy getting drunk, unreliable as well. It's super sad. It's super sad because Conor's got a few years left and a few I think he's still got some really cool fights in him. So I hope it happens. I don't know. We'll see what happens. All right. Now, let's go to the next topic, Muhammad Mokaev. Okay, Muhammad Mokaev. This was something that I made a separate video about earlier in the week. I did say that I believe that Muhammad Mokaev is going to come back to the UFC for a number of reasons. If you haven't checked it out on the channel, you should check it out. But basically, I think it's the obvious conclusion. My main points were he's 7-0, I believe, in the UFC, which is amazing. He's 23, so he's got unlimited potential. He's clearly one of the best flyweights in the world, maybe the best. He's a well-rounded fighter. People were giving him crap about his striking. I thought, even though maybe the fight was a bit lackluster against Manel Kape, I thought his striking looked good, even though he wasn't necessarily connecting on a lot of shots. But I thought he looked impressive. He was supposedly cut for reasons that he was causing too many disruptions getting into fights. Also, MMA Joey, by the way, has mentioned that he thinks it was due to a contract dispute. I think it was a combination of everything. I think maybe it was a contractual dispute as well as some of these other issues. But by the way, the fact that he's represented by Tim Simpson, who has a tremendous relationship with the UFC, I think they're going to be able to fix things. He's just too good and too talented. I would just be shocked. So what I imagine is happening right now is he's in timeout and they're going to bring him back. Now, the very interesting thing, which I thought was pretty cool that Mokaev did this, he wants to get back into the UFC so badly. He has offered, which I don't think any fighter has ever done before. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. He offered to fight his next fight for free just so he can get back into the promotion. I feel like that's a good sign. I feel like that's got to go somewhere with the UFC brass. They have to look at that and reconsider. And honestly, if I was in his position, I would probably do something similar. If I wanted it badly enough, because I've done that many times in my life. If I want a position or if I want to try something badly enough or start a partnership with a company or whatnot, first things first, if I think it's that valuable, I will do it for free. Happy to do it. Obviously, he's taking damage in these fights, so there's more liability and whatnot. But that shows you the commitment, and he does want to be the best in the world, the best of the best, and prove that. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I think that also adds more validity to the fact that the UFC will eventually bring him back. Let me just bring up a couple more of MMA Joey's comments here. So he said, the Bilal stuff really annoyed me because I thought he was a nightmare match for Leon and had earned a shot without a shadow of the doubt. So many people were casting him to the side. Yeah, you are correct. Let me tell you my perspective, just the basic fan perspective. I guess one of the reasons why I wasn't excited about it, and this was a mistake on my end. I rewatched the first fight a couple times. It really, that first round, it was only one round, so obviously I shouldn't have judged on that. But like, it did feel fairly one-sided. Leon seemed to be tagging him at will. I think he landed a pretty hard headshot, is my recollection. So I didn't see it going much differently, especially because Bilal is now up there in age, right? 36, 37. And so I was like, there's no way he's going to get faster. It's just not possible. So I didn't see, and even though he's been doing extra work and whatnot, I wasn't crazy interested in it. Then that was compounded by the fact that I thought he was saying nonsensical things in interviews. So if the personality isn't vibing essentially with, I guess, with the public or with me or whatnot, that also diminishes my interest level. Now, the reason why I had to walk some of my thoughts back was, one, I was way wrong about his speed and accuracy and his striking. He had gotten better, which was that was a tremendous achievement. Unbelievable. He talked about dialing in his nutrition and doing a lot of other things, training with Khabib. So, but the other thing that I had to walk back was part of the reason why I felt like I wasn't connecting with him is I thought he was just saying nonsense. And he proved us wrong. Like, he proved me wrong anyways. He backed up what he said. So I was happy to walk it back. I'm not going to, there's no hill that I'm going to die on in the UFC. And I like to be turned over. If I'm not a fan of somebody and now I can become a fan of them because I can see a new dimension, that's the best thing about this sport. Because at the end of the day, this sport, more than any other sport, one of the best things about the sport is you feel that connection with the individual fighters as opposed to a team or a franchise. That's why it's the best sport in the world and will be the most popular sport one day. I even think more than soccer. We got another comment from MMA Joey that I'm going to pop up. Yeah, because they thought he had no chance. Yeah, I was one of those people. I actually made a video, embarrassingly, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I made a video saying I was so confident in Leon, I'd be happy to bet $1,000. I was just like, I looked at the first match. I looked at the striking of Leon, everything he's done, the fact that he beat Colby, he beat Kamaru, he beat all these wrestlers. He's been training for Hamzat. I'm like, there's no way that Bilal's going to throw something at him that he's not going to be able to handle. I'm still shocked in a lot of ways that happened, but yo, credit to Bilal. All right, Tehran says, I knew Conor and Chandler wasn't happening from the jump. It's so sad. It's really sad. I don't know. I feel like Conor he's just gotten super disconnected from maybe the world. I don't know, with the way he talks on Twitter. I mean, it just doesn't even make sense to be his age, and to saying some of these things that he's saying are just as borderline insane. Maybe if somehow people could connect with him or let him know, or if he could understand how much people are still excited to see him come back and fight, maybe that would motivate him to zone in, stop drinking, stop partying, stop doing all that stuff, and just come in and perform at his best. That would be great. I hope it happens, but let's see. MMA Joey, one more comment. I know people hated on the fight, but I thought it was an amazing moment. I actually didn't hate on the fight. That's one thing. I didn't mind the fight. I did find it interesting. I agreed with you on that. I enjoyed that fight. I also enjoyed Mokaev versus Manel Kape. You may disagree with me there, but I actually thought that was an interesting fight. But this fight was very good. That you're absolutely correct. The fact that it ended in a decision is a unsatisfying result in general, because we always have questions in our mind. Could it have gone another way? However, this was a pretty dominant fight. So I think that feeling of uncertainty in a decision, I don't think was really an issue in this fight. But anyways, yeah, Robert G. Yeah, MMA Joey is in here. I know he's a legend. He's such a legend. I've messaged him before and told him about the channel, and this is super cool that he followed through. He told me he was gonna join and check out some of our videos, and he's a man of his word, so I really appreciate it. And MMA Joey, let me tell you guys something about MMA Joey, by the way. So one of the amazing things about him, and there's other YouTubers that I really respect, but he gives it to you straight. the biggest, I think the videos that are most emblematic of that fact are all these videos that he's made about Bilal Muhammad when Bilal Muhammad wasn't a fan favorite. And I think he even said it was hurting his channel, but he still did it because he wanted to get his back and he was a big fan of Bilal, or developed into a big fan of Bilal after seeing him fight and seeing the injustices that were sort of being levied upon him by the MMA community and the UFC, etc. So he speaks his mind, he speaks the truth, and he's very, very knowledgeable. He's been a fan of the sport. I think he's said for like 15 or 20 years. He's been a fan of the sport for a long time. I've been a fan of the sport for a long time too, but he definitely is much more knowledgeable in the sport. I like to say that I think with the combination of Justin and I, hopefully what my knowledge base is combined with Justin's expertise from the fighter perspective, I think we make a pretty cool team. But definitely MMA Joe, I got to tip my hat to him as a super knowledgeable and a very honest commentator and YouTuber. No way Conor can fight soon. He needs a long stint in rehab first. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like I said, super sad. I don't know what to do in that case because I don't know what it's. I don't think any of us know what it's like. Very few people know what it's like to be that famous because he's basically one of the most famous people in the world. So it must be a very isolating place. Like, what are the people that have felt that level of fame? Maybe like Drake. Maybe there's probably a pocket of like Fiverr to the Kardashians, and the pressure that comes with that. There's probably a lot of really, really dark sides to having that much attention on you. And it's probably tremendously hard. As much as people want to be like, oh my God, he's got everything. Why is he so crazy? Or why is he doing these things? I think it's tough. I think it's way, 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 way tougher than people kind of make it out to be or talk about. And the problem as well, because I've heard people, celebrities talk about this, when you're going through the trials and tribulations of fame, you have nobody to talk to and nobody feels bad for you because they're like, oh, we should feel bad that you're wealthy and you've got all this fame and you can do all these things, right? But there are a lot of dark sides. I've experienced a tiny bit of it with my other YouTube channel, very small fragment. And I think when you reach a certain level, and obviously living in LA, I do have a little bit of insight into it from, just basically people that I know. And there's some really bad stuff that happens to big names that they don't ever talk about because it'll draw more attention and more people that are coming to attack them or, just do stuff that sucks. Let me put it like that. So anyways, I think he's got a lot of demons and a lot of things that probably fame is, creating problems for him. M.A. Joy says, appreciate the kind words. Absolutely, man. You're the man. You give me a lot of entertainment. Love your videos. Robin Williams. Yeah, Robin Williams was probably at that level of fame. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the final topic. This is insane. And this goes back to my MMA Joey. I want to know your thoughts on this. Okay. Tell me if you agree with me. Francis Ngannou I saw your video on this, by the way. MMA Joey made a great video on Francis Ngannou's return in the PFL. So Francis Ngannou is fighting. Let me pull up his name. And I apologize because I'm not as up to date on fighters and other organizations. But Joey did talk about his competition being quite a tough fight. Yeah, versus Renan Ferreira. I think he's Brazilian. So this is going to be a huge fight. Now, MMA Joey says I got almost 2K views on the Bilal video. I haven't even checked it. Yeah. I remember I got like 1.7. But yeah, I think he is starting to catch on. I'm telling you, I think what I have a good sense of is why people like certain fighters and don't like other fighters. And I think one of the largest things that it boils down to, and tell me if you agree with me, is authenticity. We like to connect and see fighters that we feel like are super comfortable in their own skin. There's a up and coming guy. He's more than up and coming now. He's pretty proven. Peyton Talbot. I think Peyton Talbot is a great example of this. He is just himself. Brian Ortega is another guy. He is just himself. A lot of these incredible fighters that we love so much, when we see like, we feel like we know them because there's no act. There's no like hesitation when they answer a question. They're just themselves. And it's really powerful and magnetic. I think with Bilal, the problem was initially is I felt like, and I think I was incorrect on this as I pointed out in the video, but I think people felt like he was just not saying what he really felt. He was just sort of saying stuff to get a reaction or saying stuff to almost create an artificial beef, like acting like he hated Leon. It didn't make sense to me because Leon didn't seem to have ill will towards him. So that seemed inauthentic. And that, I think, made it more difficult to connect with him. But now we see that he didn't go up and be like, Leon, it's all good, right? Like you see sometimes when there's that real heated beef and at the end of the fight, they like shake and hug. Like even we saw Muhammad Mokaev and Manel Kopp shake. Like that was weird to me. I don't know if you guys felt the same way. It's great to bury the hatchet, but it made then the whole beef seem artificial and fake. When Bilal finished that fight, he still stood his ground and still is explaining why he doesn't have fond feelings or whatever towards Leon Edwards, still hates him. And it makes sense. So these types of things that have come out after the fact is like, oh, he wasn't just hyping up the fight. He was actually saying the truth and being real. And then that can change your perspective. And I think that's going to allow a lot of people to now connect with Bilal. He's sticking by his guns. He is a man of principle. He's an incredible fighter. I think we all knew that, though. I felt like he was an incredible fighter. I just felt like Leon Edwards was a really bad matchup for him. But anyways, Joey, yeah, tell me if you agree with my take on what draws people to fighters. And again, that's to me is I think I'm also talking from a personal perspective. I remember when Sean Strickland did his first interview on the MMA Hour, and he talked about his entire family and life without any holding back, right? Talked about all sorts of crazy stuff that you'd be like, wow, I can't believe you're admitting this. Talk about him fantasizing about killing people, like crazy stuff. But he was just left it all out there. And I think that to me woke me up to Sean Strickland and who he is. So that's what I think is happening with Bilal right now. People are seeing, hey, he is an authentic guy. He tells it like it is, and we can now respect him and be a fan of him. Okay. Oh, yeah. Toran says that Bilal called out Shavkat. He did. Who else is? I think Ian Gary called him out. That's it. Respect to Ian Gary, but that's wild. Okay. All right. Let's get back to Ngannou. So this is crazy, right? Ngannou's coming back to fight, and the fight is scheduled for, hold on, let me double check, October 19th. Okay. So what I think is happening now, this is going to be a huge fight. And as I said, I wanted to get, so Joey, if you don't know this, Justin, my typical co-host, he's in Alaska right now, so that's why he's not here. But Justin actually trains at Extreme Couture. He had 5 fights in the UFC, but he trains with Francis Ngannou. So I really want to get his thoughts on this training camp. One thing that Eric Nixick said is that Ngannou is now falling back in love with MMA, which is super cool. He went through some very difficult times. His son passed away, I think, at 18 months old, which was a terrible tragedy. But it sounds like he's back in the zone. He's getting in there. He's training. This is going to be a super fight. This is going to be incredible. Now, why does this connect back to John Jones and what we were talking earlier about Stipe? This fight is going to get a lot of attention for the PFL. It's going to be a big fight. And on the co-main, if I remember correctly, is Chris Cyborg. Arguably the 2 biggest fighters outside of the UFC. And arguably 2 of the most well-known fighters in MMA, period. Okay. So whatever you want to say about the PFL and them being a lesser than organization than the UFC, this is going to be a big fight. I bet you they're going to get really high numbers relative to their typical numbers. It's going to be a big event. People are going to be talking about it. If Francis goes out there and starches his opponent, again, I'm really sorry. I know his name is Ferreira, but I don't really, I'm just being honest, I don't really know too much about him. I haven't seen his fights, but it doesn't matter. If he goes out there and has an incredible performance and Ngannou starches this guy, right? It's going to circulate. The knockout's going to be probably viral. He's probably going to knock him out, and it's going to be a big buzz. Now we go back. Francis Ngannou, heavyweight champ of the UFC, leaves the UFC without being defeated. So leaves on top as the champ. Goes in, as I mentioned before, arguably beats Tyson Fury, the greatest heavyweight boxer of all time. Then comes back, starches this guy, gets a highlight reel knockout. Maybe he takes one more fight. I don't know what Ngannou's plan after this is. But now we have a heavyweight star champ in the UFC, never loses. Now he's the heavyweight champ of the PFL and arguably the heavyweight champ of boxing. I'm just saying you could say that because a lot of people felt like, me included, felt like Ngannou won that boxing match. So what does that mean? That means that Francis Ngannou, who is not a UFC fighter, is now potentially considered to be the greatest combat athlete of all time. This, I think, is the main impetus for Dana White wanting this the John Jones versus Stipe so badly, because this is what's on the precipice. And I think this could be dangerous to the brand of the UFC, majorly dangerous. So that's why I think that this is why people are getting so upset. Why is Dana White going on and on about John Jones and pushing so hard for the Stipe fight? Because He puts him in against Stipe. He starches Stipe. Then he comes back. Yeah, Francis did beat Stipe, but Stipe beat Francis the first time. John Jones went in and starched Stipe in 2 rounds or 1 round. So we all know who the greatest combat athlete of all time is. It's John Jones, a UFC fighter. Greatest UFC fighter of all time, not Francis Ngannou. I think that's at the heart of it. MMA Joey, if you're still here, do you agree? I'd love to know. And guys, what do you guys think? Do you agree? Oh, here we go. We've got Elsewhere said, who wins super heavyweight bout, MMA Joey or MMA Guru? I think MMA Joey doesn't watch MMA Guru because people have asked him about it on his streams before, and I don't think he watches him or is a big fan. I'm a huge fan of both, by the way. I think both are very, very knowledgeable, and both talk about different things a lot of times from different perspectives. Like, for example, MMA Joey really getting Bilal's back. That wasn't really the case from MMA Guru. So it's great to listen to both of them. They might be my 2 favorite, actually. Yeah, they are my 2 favorite, I would say. I really like when DC does a show with Ben Askren. Not a fan of DC and Chael. I have a really, tell me if you guys agree. I have a hard time listening to Chael. No hate to Chael, but I just have, I don't know. I have a hard time listening to. I always feel like it's some script that he's reading off of. I don't know. It's just weird. Anyways, I would say MMA Joey, MMA Guru. I love the MMA Hour. I think Ariel does an incredible job interviewing fighters, and that's almost in a different category. I like the Weasel for very specific videos, for very specific fight breakdowns or fight predictions. I don't listen to like everything, and he goes into a lot of detail on some like early prelim fights and prelim fights that maybe I'm not so interested in. But I think his fight analysis and also his reviews of close decisions are amazing. So from that perspective, I do like the Weasel. Let me think. What other shows do I really like? I actually like Michael Bisping's show, the Believe You Me podcast. I like what Anthony Smith has to say. Oh, hugely underrated show, MMA Arcade with Robert Whitaker. You guys got to check that out. I don't know why that show is not bigger. They do a combination, as I mentioned earlier in the show, of MMA and video game review, but the MMA stuff is amazing. Robert Whitaker might be one of the greatest minds in mixed martial arts. His analysis is unreal. And also you get insights into his fight decisions and his training camps and so on and so forth. That's a really good one. I'm trying to think if I'm missing any other really, really good ones. I probably am, but I watch MMA stuff constantly. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the show. Ngannou's returning October 19th. Cannot wait for that. Let's see what happens. But again, I think this is the big John Jones Stipe conspiracy. I think it all goes down. All comes down to Francis being considered the GOAT of combat sports, period. That's my thoughts. What a fun show. Too bad Justin wasn't here, but what a privilege to have MMA Joey join. That was a blast. So thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'd love to get your feedback. If you think there's anything that I could talk about that or we could include in the show that would be better for our audience, or any other suggestions in general for content. Thank you guys so much for joining. If you did like the video and the stream, make sure to click that like button. And if you want to see more and join along in our journey, that has been a blast and will continue to be a blast, make sure to click subscribe. We got shows every Friday and Monday at 1:30 p.m. PST. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.